Introduction. It was the late 1920s. Ernst Coe had moved to Florida. He began to notice that plants and birds were disappearing from one of his favorite places, the Everglades. The Everglades was a giant marsh full of unique plants and animals that couldn't be found anywhere else. Thousands of beautiful birds made the Everglades their home. Turtles, manatees, and alligators roamed its waters. Ernst Coe thought the Everglades should be turned into a national park. Some people thought Ernst Coe's idea was foolish. The Everglades was just a swamp. In some places, all you could see was water and grass. Weren't national parks supposed to be places that had spectacular scenery? Luckily, new thinking about what makes a good national park was taking shape in Washington, D.C. People didn't want to preserve only beautiful mountains. They were hoping to protect places that were unique. They wanted parks that could preserve our nation's history and culture. They wanted to develop parks that would protect plants and wildlife that couldn't be found anywhere else. Congress was creating other national parks and monuments to preserve unusual and unique places. The Badlands in South Dakota and Death Valley in California are two examples. What makes these places special? Why would someone want to visit a giant swamp or a place called Death Valley? By the picture it reads, "The Florida Everglades is home to flamingos and manatees." Chapter 1. Badlands National Park. The Badlands of South Dakota is an unusual choice for a national park. The area is barren. Compared to the lush farmlands and woodlands of the eastern United States or the snow-capped mountains of the west, the Badlands are harsh and forbidding. They are hot in the summer and bitterly cold in the winter. The Badlands are arid. Little rain falls there. When rain does fall, it sometimes results in flash floods causing erosion. Every time it rains or snows, more of Badlands National Park is washed away. But the Badlands are unique. The earth in the Badlands is red, pink, orange, brown, and gray. Erosion has created spectacular canyons, pinnacles, and narrow mesas. Many animals and plants have created homes in this strange and beautiful place. In Blueprint, it says, "The Badlands have an unusual beauty." How a fossil is formed. A fossil begins when a plant or animal dies. Mud quickly covers the animal, preserving it. After millions of years, the bones are replaced with a mineral. Now it is a fossil. An ancient marsh. Long ago, the Badlands included rich marshes. Hundreds of different mammal species lived and died in the area. The fossils of their bones are scattered throughout the park. The animals that used to live there include ancestors of horses and camels, giant pigs, and saber-toothed tigers. Even a mammal similar to a giant rhinoceros roamed there. The Badlands looked very different then. They were low and flat. The climate was warm and wet. Marshes, woodlands, and low hills dotted the area. The Badlands were more like Florida than South Dakota. Over a long period of time, the land grew cooler and drier, and the marshes dried up. The food that these mammals ate disappeared. The animals became extinct. Animals in the Badlands today. Many animals and plants still find homes in this harsh land today. Antelope, bighorn sheep, and bison roam the park. Many birds nest there too. One of the animals that lives in the Badlands is the black-footed ferret. Until 1981, these weasel-like creatures were thought to be extinct. Now they can be found in Badlands National Park. In Blueprint, it says, "The plants and animals in the Badlands are also found in the surrounding prairie." Enjoying the Badlands. Hiking is one of the most popular activities in Badlands National Park. Along the trail, you may catch glimpses of sharp-tailed grouse, bison, or even bobcats in their natural setting. You can also scan the ground for some of the Badlands' famous fossils. It's illegal to take fossils out of the park. You're not even allowed to move them. Badlands National Park also has 2 campgrounds, 2 visitor centers, and many scenic drives. The Lakota. For hundreds of years, the Native American nation known as the Lakota lived near the Badlands. They called the land Mako, which means land, Sika, bad. According to legend, the Badlands were created by a giant storm. The Lakota were farmers and hunters. For part of the year, they lived in villages. For the rest of the year, they traveled to hunt buffalo. Around 1600, they brought horses north. The horses helped them become traders and full-time buffalo hunters. In December 1890, the U.S. Army defeated the Lakota and forced them onto the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Today, many Lakota still live there. The top of page 9 by the pictures, it reads, "The dinosaur bone was found in the Badlands." The park offers guided hikes led by a ranger. You can also hike on your own. Chapter 2, Death Valley National Park. There is an even harsher land than the Badlands. It is known as Death Valley. It's in eastern California and western Nevada. Death Valley has a long and varied human history. People have lived there for thousands of years. The Shoshone Nation was in Death Valley when European settlers arrived there looking for gold. Death Valley National Monument was created in 1933 when the U.S. government took much of the land away from the Shoshone. It became a national park in 1994. In 2003, some of the Death Valley land was returned to the Shoshone. Although Death Valley is a harsh place, its name is an exaggeration. A group of pioneers gave Death Valley its name. They were lost for several days in the valley. Their journey was hard, but only one person in the group died. The picture shows, in addition to the valley, Death Valley also includes sand dunes and mountains. Under the picture at the top in blue, it reads, "Mesquite and other desert shrubs grow along the sides of the valley. They are adapted to hot, dry conditions." A diverse desert. A desert is a place that gets less than 10 inches, or 254 millimeters, of rain every year. Death Valley National Park gets less than 2 inches, or 50 millimeters, of rain a year. Deserts are usually very hot. Death Valley is the hottest place in the United States. It is also the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere. Death Valley is unique in many ways. Because this park covers such a wide range of altitudes, it has an extremely diverse desert ecosystem. Several different types of deserts are located within its borders. To some people, a diverse desert sounds impossible. Aren't all deserts barren and lifeless? Not at all. Death Valley has over 600 kinds of plants, 230 types of birds, 19 kinds of snakes, 17 kinds of lizards, several dozen mammal species, and even some fish. It even has some rare plants and animals living within its borders. An endangered desert fish. One of the rare animals living in Death Valley is the pupfish. This tiny fish has adapted to living in hot, salty water of deserts. It is found only in the southwestern United States and Mexico. Several species of pupfish are endangered. Under the picture, it reads, "Long ago, people drew with petroglyph on a stone wall in Death Valley." Exploring the park. Visitors can enjoy Death Valley in many different ways. They can take hikes. Some might choose to visit the 3 museums. Others might take a scenic drive and stop at one of the many spectacular overlooks. Visitors can also camp under the stars in one of the park's 10 campgrounds. There are many things to discover and explore. Tourists love to view prehistoric petroglyphs or drawings on stone done by Native Americans. Others like to visit one of the many abandoned mining towns within the park. Some enjoy investigating the diverse geology of the area. Chapter 3, Everglades National Park. The Everglades were created at the end of the Ice Age around 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. Melting glaciers caused the southern tip of Florida to flood. Today, the Everglades include areas of swamp, savanna, and pine forest. Most of the marsh is covered with sawgrass. This thick, tall grass can grow as high as 10 feet, 3 meters. Because of this grass, writer Marjorie Stoneman Douglas called the Everglades a river of grass. But there were people who did not want to preserve this river of grass. They had other ideas. Some people thought the swamp should be drained. They believed it would be a good place to grow crops. They said draining the swamp would also stop flooding. Other people hoped oil would be found there. In 1934, Congress passed a resolution to create Everglades National Park. That saved the park. However, the park wouldn't be created for another 13 years. Meanwhile, threats to the park continued. The Everglades was a swamp. It was a few inches deep, but many miles wide. Some people called it a giant puddle. The Everglades needed to have water flowing into it. Outside the Everglades, people were diverting streams and rivers. Those who loved the Everglades were very worried. If something didn't happen soon, there would be nothing left to preserve. Finally, in 1947, President Harry S. Truman signed the law that established Everglades National Park. The goal set by Ernst Coe back in the 1920s had finally been completed. Below, above the picture in blue, it reads, "Its beauty is rather subtle to the average observer in search of the spectacular," wrote the committee that recommended creating Everglades National Park. The plants and animals of the Everglades. The Everglades has over 1,000 species of plants from trees to flowers. Some of the most distinctive plants are mangrove trees, strangler fig trees, and orchids. There are several species of orchids in the park, and some of these orchids are threatened. The Everglades is a refuge for animals. Over 340 species of birds live there, including flamingos, storks, and roseate spoonbills. Several endangered animals live there too. They include the American alligator, the West Indian manatee, and the Florida panther. Below by the picture it reads, "Although it's against the law to pick them, orchids continue to disappear from the Everglades." People of the Everglades. People have lived in the Everglades for thousands of years. The first people to live there were Native Americans known as the Tequesta and the Calusa. Later, the Seminole and Creek nations moved to the Everglades. In the early 1500s, Spanish explorers landed on the shores of Florida in search of gold. Most of the Native Americans living there died during the Spanish explorations from disease or in battle. Later, people from the northern United States moved into southern Florida. They were mostly loggers, miners, and farmers. By the middle of the 20th century, southern Florida was one of the most popular places to live in the United States. Below the picture, it reads, "Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon named Florida." Everglades National Park today. The Everglades is a wilderness park. It is not developed. Most of the ways to enjoy the park are old-fashioned. You can hike, canoe, take a boat, or go on a tram tour. You can take a guided walk or walk on your own. Remember to always take bug repellent and plenty of sunscreen. Park rangers also suggest wearing long pants and long-sleeve shirts, even in the summer, to protect you from the sun and biting insects. There are 2 developed campgrounds in the park. The park also has 5 visitor centers with displays about the park's history, climate, and plants and animals. You can stay at the 1 hotel inside the park. Conclusion. The Badlands, Death Valley, and the Everglades are just 3 of our unique national parks. Badlands National Park preserves an ancient fossil bed and a piece of South Dakota prairie. Death Valley National Park protects a diverse desert ecosystem. Everglades National Park offers a rich and diverse area of Florida. Each park is very different, yet they all share one important thing. They demonstrate part of our country's national heritage. The national park system is one of the things that makes the United States special. The picture reads, "People have been traveling through the Everglades by boat for thousands of years."